Kevin Dalton, thank you for being here today.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.
So, I follow you on Twitter. I live in California. So, hey, you're one of my news outlets for the state of California, and it's both funny and depressing all in one. I don't know what kind
Yeah,
of brand you're going for, but that's what I get off of it.
that's pretty scary and pretty telling all at the same time when I'm anyone's news source for what's happening in California. But the amount of times people will reach out to me and go, I had no idea. It's like these should be major news stories, whether it was a mass shooting or just the smash and grab robberies or the street takeovers that are happening 100 times a night. No one knows this stuff is happening, and it's just if it gets reported on, it's a little blip on the radar. And California has to be seen, smelt, felt, experienced to really feel what's going on. And I should say, yeah, I've been in Idaho for a year now, but I
Oh, it's
spent
been a year. Okay.
46 years in California, in Los Angeles County. So I am not one of those, as Gavin Newsom wants to call them, California haters that are out of state. I
Yeah.
earned my California hatership over several
Yeah.
decades,
You,
and I still have family there. I still have
yeah, of
friends,
course.
and care a lot about them. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. You graduated. That's all. You finally graduated.
boy, finally. I wish I would have studied harder and got out sooner, but mistakes were made.
Well, let's go back. What is your story? Where are you from? How did you end up in Idaho? What got to the point where you are now?
Well, it all started way back in the late 70s. Born in Los Angeles County, Cedar Sinai. Grew up in San Dimas, California. Bill and Ted, San Dimas football rules. Just started working from a young age. Like as soon as I turned 16, I was working at a pizza place because I needed gas money and insurance money for my car, and that was kind of my life from then. Was just get a job, work hard, get a job, work hard. And I ended up at one point working in radio. I had a career in telecommunications, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I quit my job and got an internship at a radio station. So I went from a career to stapling concert tickets and sending faxes, and worked my way up through radio from an intern to producing a radio show, to hosting a radio
Oh
show,
wow.
to ending up over at Sirius XM and TMZ for a while. And then I really started taking a look around at the world around me. And the first thing that really stuck out to me was the homeless problem.
Hmm.
I was the guy who drove around Los Angeles, and homelessness was just a background feature. As
Yeah.
you drove around, it was like, oh yeah, there's tents, there's encampments on the freeway. As soon as you drive off the freeway, there are more encampments, and as you drive down the road, it's littered with tents and human beings, because that's the way it is. And then I got a job working on Hollywood Boulevard, where I was no longer kind of driving past this background of people, and I got to know some of the people living out on the street. One guy in particular, his name was Derek, and had a conversation with him one day, and then all of a sudden it struck me. I got hit like a ton of bricks that Derek was this homeless, crazy guy at times living on the street, but he was also a guy who not that long ago was teaching crew in a college back in DC. And no matter what happened to him, whether it was his fault or, well, I mean, decisions are always pretty much made that land people on the street. But he wasn't just a crazy homeless guy. He was a guy with a backstory and a
Hmm.
history and a family and a job. And whatever was going on, he needed help. And at that point, I was like, oh man, it's not just Derek. It's all of the encampments I'm driving by. It's all of the tents. It's all of the people flopped out on the sidewalk. They were all Derek. At one point, they had this family, they had this past, and they need help. And this was, I don't know, 2014, 2015, I had this crazy idea. I'm like, I'm going to run for mayor of Los Angeles. So I started a Twitter at the time, Twitter handle next LA mayor, and I just kind of ran with it.
Hmm.
And that was kind of fun, but all the time learning about kind of the politics of homelessness and really being exposed to the homeless industrial complex, and working with people who are not so much in the nonprofits but the people who are actually there, boots on the
Hmm.
ground, trying to help. And it gave me such a different perspective on the whole entire subject, and really launched me into wanting to do more. um, then the pandemic hit. I ended up moving out of the city of Los Angeles, which made it
Hmm.
difficult to run for mayor of Los Angeles at that point. So I was approached by someone to run for board of supervisor
Hmm.
in 2022. And this was, again, right in the middle of the pandemic, and not really aware of what the board of supervisors even was at the time. It was just, I had heard of it, but no one knew what they were until all of a sudden beaches are getting shut down and schools are shut down. And all of a sudden, these major decisions that are
Hmm.
impacting 10 million lives are just being made on a whim. And someone should suggested I run for the position, and I did. And that's really when, getting involved in politics and seeing, everything that's going on. Spoiler alert, I got my ass handed to me in the election. I was running against Hilda Solis, who was a former a Biden cabinet member. She's been in the board of supervisors. She was kind of like put out to pasture there. She had some issues with some three-letter agencies within the government who were unhappy with some of the things she was doing. So she ended up out there. I raised $5,000 for my little campaign. She raised
Oh man.
$900,000 for the campaign. So 75% of the votes went to her. I get it. She's the incumbent. She has all the money. She has the name. But that didn't stop me from wanting to do more, and if you look at my ex account, it said I tried to work within the system. Now I'm
Hmm.
doing it my way,
Yep.
and I'm having a lot more, I think, success reaching out to people and communicating with people and showing them what's going on, not just in LA County, but also in California. You spend 4 minutes on my account, and that Gavin Newsom is not one of my favorite people, and that's because he's kind of the tip of the spear for a lot of the problems in California. He's
Hmm.
leadership starts at the top, and it's really, really bad there. He's halfway through his second term. He's got his eyes on the White House when
Hmm.
California desperately needs a leader more than anything.
Hmm.
So wow, I'm rambling on the question of how I got from here to there. So, I'm now in Eagle, Idaho, small
Hmm.
town Idaho, just outside of Boise. We moved just a little bit over a year ago. When I say we, my family,
Hmm.
my wife and my small son, and it's just been the greatest move of our life. I mean, the amount of time outside my son gets to spend, the people, the community, it's absolutely wonderful. And now I'm, worried about my people back home. I've got 40 years worth of friends, family, and
Hmm.
community back there. And I want to make sure that they're, as safe as possible and people know what's going on where they are. And I damn sure want to make sure that Gavin Newsom's garbage politics stop right there. They don't go any further than California. God forbid they
Hmm.
get to the White House. So, I want everyone to know exactly who this guy is. And hopefully sometime in, I think, 2020, January 2027, he retires back to his winery in Sonoma County and we never hear from him again.
No, it's crazy. You said so you like being in Idaho because your son gets to spend so much time outside, which is I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, and I moved to California because that's what you can do here, spend so much time outside, which where we live, we still do. And it's great. But that's like, I don't know how I don't know how my parents raised us in Boston when it's freezing for 5 months out of the year in relation to my kids that are being raised here. get to spend whatever, it's January and it's 65 and they're outside riding their bikes. Like that's the whole appeal of California, is the weather and the beaches and the parks and the mountains. And for you to say there's more opportunity leaving the state just kind of is jarring. So why is that? Why were you not able to be outside in California as much as you are in around Boise?
Well, I think it's also the place you are in California. I was
Hmm.
in Pomona with my son when he was born. I was in Pomona, about 30 miles east of Los Angeles, and we had a gigantic park, Ganesha Park, beautiful, brand new
Mm.
playground, huge sprawling green grass, lots of gazebos, and we never once went there in the almost 4 years we lived in that house just
Oh
down the
man.
street,
Yeah.
because it was filled with homeless people. It was filled with, and by no means do I want to make this sound disparaging to homeless people. The only thing I want is for them to not die on the streets.
Hmm.
But we're also talking about people who are seriously addicted to drugs, who are there to score drugs, to do drugs, to sleep off the drugs, or to buy drugs. And the park was unusable. And it wasn't just that park. Before my son was around, my wife and I lived in West Hollywood, and that was the same. It was a fun community, but in the 6 years that we were there, we saw it completely fall apart.
Mm.
Not just to homelessness, but to crime. Car break-ins. It was
Mm.
just a regular occurrence around there. So it makes going outside difficult. We've got snow here. We're 4 months out of the year. We've got a lot of snow,
Hmm.
and it's manageable. It's fun,
Yeah.
and I'm sure I'm in the honeymoon phase with snow and shoveling. And in 2 or 3 years, I'm gonna be like, this is awful. But right now it's great. Um, you know, uh, it's parks. There's 56 parks, I think, in the city of Boise. And it's just a comfortability level of
Yeah.
having, my wife walk the dog whenever she wants and not have to worry about, geez, her getting accosted or somebody stealing the dog. It's just, I know a lot of people think it's fear mongering and propaganda, but
Mm.
it doesn't feel safe to walk down the streets of Los Angeles. And I didn't want that for my family. I wanted something else. So we move out here, and it's mountains and it's rivers and it's lakes and it's friendly, welcoming people that no matter what, Idaho says, they're like, we're full. We don't want any more. Everyone here is so incredibly welcoming and so nice. It depends on your attitude. If you know
Mm.
if you're going to move here and be a dick and wonder why people are treating you like a dick, well, guess what? You're a dick.
Yeah.
But come here and be a part of the community and want to not make it something else, but just live here and enjoy everything that it has to offer. And it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, we went to Boise last year and visited it for the first time. It was awesome. It is a beautiful place. Um, let's talk about homelessness, like from a let's start at like a macro perspective. What do you think is causing it to grow? And we could do the cities of California or wherever you want. And then, you had mentioned the homelessness industrial complex. What is that? Why is it that the more that gets spent on it, the bigger the problem gets? Take us through your views of the whole issue, and we can do it through California lens if you want.
Sure. The most macro thing I can think of, and it's wildly kind of simple, but homelessness is now an acceptable answer. It's an acceptable life choice. Where if you went back 20, 30 years ago, and that would be absolutely insane. It
Hmm.
would be absolutely insane for somebody to select that. It would be absolutely insane for society to allow it to happen. But it was like boiling a frog where you don't even notice, where, you get a little lax on people being out on the streets, you get a little lax on drug laws, and then all of a sudden a decade goes by and you're like, oh man, this 12,000 became 50,000. Oh man, now it's 180,000 and you don't know what to do with it.
Hmm.
Um, it's it, it's just going back to a time when we just go, we're not we're not doing this. This is not what we do. And going to the homeless industrial complex that wants to feed right into it. The simplest way I can describe the homeless industrial complex is Weight Watchers. Weight Watchers really doesn't want you to lose the weight. Because if you go in and you're paying $100 a month and you're buying the food, if you lose all the weight, you're no longer dropping the $100 a month. You're no longer buying all the food.
Hmm.
That's bad business for Weight Watchers.
Yep.
Solving homelessness is bad business for the homeless industrial complex because right now I can show you the audit that Gavin Newsom doesn't know where 24 billion taxpayer dollars went. I can show you that homelessness increased by 30%. I don't know where the money went. It went into somebody's pockets, though. It
Hmm.
didn't just disappear, it didn't just blow away into the ocean. It's gone. So somebody's getting rich
Yeah.
and they're building $900,000 single homeless units.
Yeah.
Somebody's getting rich. I mean, I can go on Zillow right now and find 1,000 houses for $150,000. They may not be here in California, but
Hmm.
guess what? These are homes that can be purchased at 10% of the cost of whatever you're trying to do. I mean, the decisions are so unbelievably bad that people are just getting rich off of it. You know,
Yeah.
if $24 billion went away, but half the people were off the streets, I'd be like, well, you know what? Sounds like a lot of money, but we're making progress. Everything is backwards and everything is perpetually worse. I'm here in just in the outskirts of Boise, and when the Grants Pass judgment just came down from the Supreme Court, the mayor of Boise was like, "Hey, I want to make sure everyone knows that we are not going to criminalize homelessness, and we welcome everyone and compassion, compassion, compassion." And this could not be a more insane approach because what she wants to do is take the same exact thing that Los Angeles has done, that San Francisco has done, that Denver has done, and she thinks something is going to be different. It won't.
Hmm.
It's going to right now we've got 600 to 700 homeless people in the capital of Idaho in Boise. That's nothing. That is something that, no joke, we should be able to fix in a month if we
Hmm.
want to. But we're not going to. We're going to treat this with compassion and we're going to welcome everyone. And I'm telling you right now, mark it on the calendar. A year from now, that 600 or 700 will be 5,000.
Hmm.
And then in 10 years from now, it's going to be 15. And they're going to go, what happened? We're
Yeah.
just being compassionate. We're building these $1 million homeless shelters and the problem keeps growing. We just enforce the laws. Don't
Yeah.
let people do drugs on the street.
Yeah.
Let's get them help. Not only mental help, let's get them job training. Let's get them back up on their feet. The people that are not able to do that, I'm sorry. We need to find a place for them because compassion isn't letting them slowly commit suicide on the sidewalks. They
Hmm.
need a facility that can take care of them. That is the compassionate thing to do, and we have such a great opportunity to fix that here in this state, in this city. But we're going to follow the same progressive path that all these other progressive cities have gone down and failed.
What do you think is driving? So, um, you mentioned how it's more acceptable to be homeless, and they're compassionate about allowing people to live that way, right? And that's kind of been a trend for a long time. That doesn't mean the people individually would become homeless because that's an option. So, what do you think are the factors that are driving more people to be homeless over time? What's pushing them there, or why
Drugs,
are they choosing it?
drugs, and mental health.
Hmm.
Is there the people that just came up a couple $100 short on rent, and they are struggling to make ends meet, and they are not afflicted with addiction or anything like that? Without question, those people exist. Are they more than 1% of the population out there on the streets? I would be hard pressed to find them,
Yeah.
only because I've never ever seen them before.
Yeah.
And those are the people that should be taking advantage of the services. The other 99.8% of the people are service resistant, and they want to be out there because that's where the drugs are. That's it. If the drug dealers were forced out, if you just said, if you could just snap your finger and say, look, in Los Angeles County, magically drugs, illegal drugs cannot be sold here anymore.
Mhm.
What do you think would happen to the vast majority of the homeless population? They would go outside of Los Angeles County. They would go
Mhm.
to wherever those drug dealers were now set up because that's what they're there for.
Yeah.
So if we start enforcing laws and stop, turning the chair around and being the cool guy having a conversation with everybody and be an adult and say, look, we're not going to have open drug markets anymore. This is a thing again. If we're talking 20 years ago, and I said, oh yeah, the open drug markets that are all over Los Angeles and San Francisco and Oakland, you would look at me as if I was crazy because why would something like that exist? The police would just go down there and shut it down. But that's not what we're doing. So not only is there this open air drug market, there's this open air black market of all the stolen goods. So the people that have spent all day raiding the Walmarts and the Walgreens and the CVS's can sell all their stolen goods so they can get the drugs. And this is all happening right out on the street. I mean, there's half a dozen people you can follow on social media that just walk around San Francisco just
Yeah.
documenting this. And
Yeah.
call in the National Guard, stop being everyone's best friend, and end this.
Okay, let's say Gavin Newsom gets placed in instead of Biden and he wins the presidential election and they appoint you governor of California. How do you fix, and this is beyond just the homelessness. What would you do to fix the issues in California?
Back to the beginning, start enforcing laws. And it's also about empowering police officers. Because if you empower police officers to do their jobs, ensure that if they do their jobs, these criminals are going to get prosecuted. They're going to go to jail. I'm going to stop closing jails, and I'm going to put people in them who belong there. I think there's this notion that it's like, hey, if you build more prisons, you just have to fill them up with people. No, no. How about people, how about if people know that there are going to be consequences for their crimes? Understand, if you walk into a Nordstrom and you walk out with 30 handbags under your shoulders, you're going to go to jail for a significant amount of time. And once people start understanding this, if they don't stop, they're going to go to jail. And if they stop, guess what? Then we start having a society again. We start having not only empowered cops, but people who want to be cops again. LAPD are having trouble recruiting. CHP are having trouble recruiting. Why would you want
Mm-hmm.
to be in law enforcement in LA County when you know that right off the bat you are not supported at all? You look at all these street takeovers that are happening, and I throw out the question that I already know the answer to. I'm like, why aren't the cops doing anything? And one, because they're being told not to do anything. Two, they don't have the resources to do anything. Three, if they did something, they would lose their job. They would, to stop what's happening, they would have to, use some force. And there's so many cameras out there. Any cop out there is just going to lose their job within a week. So, it's absolutely madness running wild everywhere. So that's what I do. That's the first thing I do is, governor, is empower the police to do their jobs. Stop with the DAs just letting everyone off. Stop with no bail. We're going to make crime again, and everything else starts falling into place pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as people start feeling comfortable going to going out to restaurants, then they go out to eat and more restaurants open up because business is better and the economy gets better and people aren't flopped out on the streets. And guess what? Once we start getting people off the street and healed for real, we don't have to continue funding them infinitely through, through these homeless solutions that never work. No, I
Hmm.
would much rather take this guy off the street, say, look, here's job training. I'm not, whether you want to go to school or what, whatever, you just look, you learn to weld. Now you have a skill. You have something that can carry you for the rest of your life. Let's get you back up on your feet, and now you're a tax paying earner instead of someone who's going to be living on the taxpayer dime for the rest of their life. We get these people off. This is moving forward. This is actual progress that progressives should be working on, but they're all Weight Watchers, just trying to keep people fat and spending money.
Yeah. It's the same with our healthcare system, right? It's not really a healthcare system. If everyone were in good shape and healthy, there'd be no money to make, essentially, except the bare necessities. So
Without question.
same
Imagine
incentive.
focusing on health instead of health care.
Yeah.
Imagine if we did that through the pandemic, and I mean,
No.
imagine if we just said, look, you know, eh, get vaccinated, do whatever, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, lose the excess body fat, drop
Yeah.
20 pounds, drop 30 pounds. We could have saved millions of lives and billions upon billions of medical costs if we just got people healthy.
Yeah.
COVID, people freak out about that. Dude, let's talk type 2 diabetes. Let's talk about premature heart disease. I mean, you want to talk about the things that are killing 6, 7, 800,000 Americans every single year, cutting their life short by 30, 40 years, and making that last 10, 5, 10 years of their lives absolutely miserable.
Hmm.
Man, imagine the improvement we could make in people's lives if we focused on health.
Yeah.
But where's the money to be made in that? Weight
Right.
Watchers is like, no, man, those people are losing way too much
Yeah.
weight. We're going out of business.
That's right. Let's go up a level because you've been covering this a lot too, and I want to ask you about the presidential election debate. What the heck just happened? I couldn't watch the debate, watched the highlights, some of it, and then immediately saw the left media just all turn at the exact same time on Biden, which is just ridiculous. So take us through it.
Well, that's the long and short of it. Everyone was able to hide behind the GOP lie and this propaganda that that Biden was addled or slowing down or showing signs of dementia, but Thursday just exposed it. They can't say that anymore. And the ones that are just being paid to. Harry Sisson has made it 100% clear through his allegiance to Biden won that debate hands down. I'm like, okay, you're getting paid to say that. Somebody sent you this message and you're posting it because otherwise you shouldn't be driving a car. If you think that Biden won the debate, that should be the greatest test at the DMV right now because you have a serious head injury and cannot decipher reality. And like Jake Tapper, wow, that guy has made just an absolute 180, with his coverage. And I don't know if it's because he witnessed it firsthand as a moderator of the debate and was like, dear God, this is an absolute mess. But he's gone from, being a far left cheerleader to not right, but just in the center where CNN should be. I've been seeing some great coverage from them, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but CNN Plus might still be a thing if they were doing the same kind of coverage that CNN is now. Um, Tapper just said that all 50 governors got on a call yesterday talking about Biden. No one's heard from Biden. No one's heard from the VP or the campaign. They're scrambling. They're looking for some sort of leadership. And the party is splintering. It's wild. They're trying to push Biden out. They want to push Kamala in, or maybe Gavin Newsom, or someone else that doesn't have the stink of failure on them like everyone else does. I was kind of running through it yesterday, and I'm like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Joe Biden right now is the Democrats' best hope. I think it's going to make it even worse if they dump him and run with someone else. I think they're going to, try to go for almost like a pity sort of vibe at this point. They're like, even some of the Democrats are turning their back on old Uncle Joe, and he just wants to be here for the country, and please support him for democracy. I don't know what the message is that they're going to send at this point, but there can't be another debate. I
Mhm.
don't know how they put him up there. I mean, this was kind of a he showed all of his cards last Thursday. If they did another debate and he had a fantastic showing, I don't know, that maybe breaks him back to even, maybe, but it doesn't it doesn't make the situation go away. It doesn't make it better. And there's a significantly good chance he just craps the bed again and has
Yeah.
another terrible showing. He did his little remarks on the Supreme Court ruling on Trump's immunity yesterday, and
Mhm.
that was like 4 minutes and 40 seconds. He was just up there, boom, 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 rambled, just hit some quick teleprompter stuff and was out there without answering any questions or anything. So
Yeah.
if they can keep the debate under 5 minutes, he'll be okay.
Yeah.
But trying to do another 90, I think, is impossible. And they need to get him out to highlight that he's not dementia addled Joe, but I don't think they can do that.
Yeah. I There's no way the whole like left media, basically CNN and MSNBC. I went around like channel to channel, and they all had the exact same bottom line banner on like insider Biden or Democratic Party person says, Biden can't do it anymore or something. It was all like the same exact thing. So there's no way it was organic that all these people were at the same time realizing and saying, I'm finally going to stand up and say what's right. So it all seems so coordinated to me. Um,
You're exactly right. Sorry. It's this is the left is absolutely gutless to go out on a limb and say anything outside of the party line, exactly what's already been like the endorsed talking point. So
yeah,
for them to make such a big switch like that within minutes of each other, you're exactly right. I mean, it was somebody just made the call and said, okay, we're the narrative has officially switched, everyone, and here we go.
yeah,
Because for everyone to turn like that all at once, and there's the handful of people, there's the Brooklyn dad, there's the Harry Sissons, and anyone who's currently employed in the Biden administrations are the only ones who are still riding with Biden. Everyone else is just trying to figure out how the hell to get off that ship.
yeah. So then, if that is the case, that was all very coordinated from the Democrats, which seems pretty obvious. Then the plan is to try to get him out. There's no other answer, right? Do you think if that is their plan, which looks obvious, because why else would they just be bad mouthing their candidate? Do you think they have a chance to do that, or how are they going to pull that off? Can they?
I don't know if they can do it in a non-messy way without Jill being on board. And
Mm.
I'm guessing she's probably running more of the Biden ship at this point anyway. I think she's going to be a big problem. I don't know if the DNC can just say, look, sorry, bro, you're out. I think that would be an absolute disaster. I think that's what kind of goes back to my thinking that they have to stick with him, because unless he voluntarily, I mean, they pull him aside and go, Joe, you have to go. We're not going to support you. You need to make a statement that says, my health is failing, I
Yeah,
need to take care of me. He needs to be the one to make that statement. He needs to be the one, that goes out with honor, because if they just take old Yeller out to the barn and put him down, they're it's all is lost. There's not a Michelle Obama on the planet that I think could make them come back from that. So um if they can convince Jill maybe they can convince Joe, or I mean, convince Jill. That's the whole entire thing. Then
Mhm.
who do you go with? The only person on the planet more unlikable than Joe Biden is Kamala Harris. Um, I I oh, I'm like, do I want to see a debate between Harris and Trump? I'm like, yeah, I think I do. Newsom and Trump, I think, would be a great debate, because they're both smart dudes. I hate to give Newsom any credit at all, but he's not dumb. I think that they
Mhm.
would have a great debate. But I still don't see Newsom winning overall. And I would just want to see Kamala debate, because I think it would end up more of a like spot on Saturday Night Live bit than an actual debate. I'm like, all right, hold on. They swapped out Maya Rudolph during a commercial or something. I have no idea
Yeah.
what this woman's saying. She's crazy. So, and I know Trump would have a field day with Kamala also. So, what the future holds and what they're going to do, I I am legitimately excited to see what's going to happen. A month ago it was like, okay, it's Trump, it's Biden, blah blah blah. We're gonna get to November. It's gonna be the same thing. This is exciting now. I mean, it's frightening because it's the potential leader of the free world being elected. But holy cow! I mean, to have something that was I don't think anyone saw this coming. And then for it to fall apart in such crazy, desperate disarray that the Democratic Party is in right now. It's just pop your popcorn, everyone. This is gonna be fun to watch for the next few months.
Let me ask you a question that I really don't understand. So there's been all this push, this DEI stuff, and all the like just pervasive, especially since COVID. All that stuff has taken off, and yet we have the oldest, whitest candidates ever. So like it's how are both of those things happening at the same time? What do you think is the dichotomy there?
It's great that the oldest white guy is talking about systemic anything. It's like, no, you are the systemic thing. Biden during the debate was like, I was chastised for being the youngest guy, and now I'm the oldest guy. And it's like, yeah, you've been there for 50 years, 60 years. What have you done? And that really shows you their commitment to DEI and everything else. It's going back to being the cool guy. They want to be the cool parent, spin the chair around. All right, everyone, here's what we're gonna do. This is the cool new thing, and blah blah blah. Law and order, justice, blah. No, 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 no. We're focusing on this now.
Hmm.
And but then when it comes down to what they actually do, they put out the old white guy. That's exactly what they do. They brought in Kamala Harris because that was going to be
Hmm.
that was Joe's decree, that he was going to bring in a woman of color for the VP spot.
Yeah.
And which, I'm not saying that she wasn't the best person for the job, but you do kind of limit the talent pool a little bit when you go to women of color who have risen to the level of being able to be seen as a VP. You go from a talent pool of millions or thousands to six, and you end up with Kamala Harris that way. So it's like a lot of the progressive policies, they sound good, they feel good.
Hmm.
I like to figure out where people are coming from. You know, uh, the idea of socialism, I get it. It sounds great, right? Everyone's equal. Everyone has a fair share of the pie. No one goes hungry. If you're a kindergartner, my 5-year-old, that's his utopia. I get it. It's not real. It
Yeah.
doesn't exist in the real world. It will never ever work. But I can
Hmm.
understand where people come from with that mentality. It doesn't work. I don't think it will ever work. But it's a nice idea, I guess.
Hmm.
It's just yeah.
So it is so crazy. Everything you cover and talk about is so nuts and weird and depressing. How do you handle the negativity, and how do you stay positive with all this while you're doing it?
I I like to, boy, I don't want to say I like to make light of it, but I always like to find something interesting about it. And that's what kind of keeps me going instead of just posting a video. Because a lot of, there's a lot of people who can just post a video and just not do any sort of headline or thought into it. I like the creative aspect of it. I
Hmm.
like finding a different angle or something that's interesting, and or making people interested in something that may not be interesting or they didn't know they were supposed to be interested about. I like that informing people idea. Um, I hope for a little bit of change. I do legitimately hope that people see this stuff and go, okay, maybe people shouldn't be, living on the streets. Maybe we shouldn't have just complete crime anarchy, all over the place. And maybe, this stuff helps a little bit. And then, a lot of the stuff is just, it's not real life. That's the biggest thing to remember with, especially being online. It's like, oh, that's right, there's a real world out here. And I
Yeah.
talked to my wife about, stuff, and I'm like, okay, we need to do a show together because she doesn't really watch any news. She, scrolls her fun videos on Instagram and stuff like that. But if I ask about, the immunity Supreme Court case, or the, what is it, the Hawk Tua girl, or anything that's like the big flash in the pan for 5 minutes online, it's just, it's gone, it's into the ether for her, because everything moves so fast.
Yeah.
Everything that's the outrage du jour right now, I find myself able to not get emotionally outraged about it, because I know it's not going to be a thing in 6 minutes.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
there's certain things that the important conversations I have with my wife about the real world are the stuff that she knows about, and I'm like, oh, this is real. This is
Hmm.
important stuff. She's like my litmus test for the real world out there, and all this other stuff. I don't know if it has a real effect on the world as a whole. I think
Hmm.
we make little inroads, and we make progress here on X and on social media, but then, push away the phone, and you go outside and you enjoy the parks and the community,
Yeah.
and that's the real world that, all of a sudden you're like, I got likes, and they're like, bro, we're just waiting in line for the slide. This
Yeah.
is
Yeah. Yeah.
this is
Right.
this is the real world out here. So
Yep.
I think it's the balance between, all of that stuff, and finding your place here, and out there is so much more important.
Totally. What are you seeing that does give you hope? What are some positive, either new laws, movements, uh, elected officials in other countries, countries that are doing it well, states that are doing it well? What are the positive kind of signposts you're seeing that are moving us out of this kind of area we're in?
I think new voices are important. I think what social media was promised for so long, is with Elon Musk's help in X, it's really starting to happen, where it's leveling the playing field, where, you and I can have this conversation, and it's I don't think it does get buried. It's not lost, and there's people who are out there who are looking for new voices, and hopefully these voices translate into beyond social media, where instead of just having the two 80-year-old white guys up there, we have new voices. I was excited about Andrew Yang a couple of years ago. I did not agree with a lot of what he had to say politically, but I liked how he was doing it, and it was
Hmm.
different, and I was like, oh, this is what politics could be. It could
Yeah.
be interesting and fun and engaging, and it doesn't need to be the same thing. But the parties don't want that, and I mean, we can talk about like uniparty stuff, but it doesn't behoove the Republicans or the Democrats to have fresh, interesting new blood in there. Keep stuff the same, keep,
Yeah.
doing it as we're doing it. And it's change is scary. Change, it can be chaotic, and it's not the thing that you want it to be. So I'm really excited that there's so much potential for new and interesting voices out there that get some traction. Max Bonilla is like a 17 or 18-year-old kid
Mm.
in California. I think he's in the Bay Area, and he's on X every day, and he's posting about the governor. And I love that there are kids out there.
Hmm.
Harry Sisson, whatever. He's paid to do what he's doing, but I'm glad that there are kids out there getting other kids, motivated and interested in politics, because we we need these voices. I mean, the average age in Congress has got to be in the 70s,
It's crazy.
and you've got the Nancy Pelosi's and the Schumers and the everyone else who are, sorry, I hate to sound like an ageist, because there are a lot of people. Bernie Sanders, he's 164, but dude's sharp as a tack. So I don't want to make it all about age, but there's some wildly emerging technologies. I mean, I don't have a great grasp of AI at 47.
Hmm.
And now you're talking about people who are 67 and 77 trying to get a handle on this, let alone make legislature that could, it will form the path of this for hundreds of years. I
Yeah.
want people who have a better idea of what they're talking about making the laws, about this stuff.
Yeah.
That shouldn't seem controversial.
Well, that it's ironic because like they're trying to just keep things the way they are, which you end up with a bunch of 80-year-olds, which they will all die soon, and then you're forced to flip over, and they don't really want to do that. So maybe it's going to get interesting anyhow with this whole generation of like 80-year-olds that are kind of running the country. It will flip in the next 4 or 5 years because it just has to.
Well, yeah, it just has to. And it'll be interesting to see if it comes in a wave also. I mean,
Hmm.
if all of a sudden we're seeing 30, 40 congressmen and senators retiring because they're literally just, they're unable to do the job, and we're getting some new fresh blood in there. And that, that goes both ways. You get the young fresh blood in there that's AOC, who's
Hmm.
the crazy 5-year-old socialist. It's like, yeah, that sounds great, but it's not going to work. So but that's, people like the sounds good more than the practicality of it.
Yeah. Kevin, what do you think we missed today? Anything on your mind that we didn't cover?
No, I don't think so. This fun conversation.
Yeah.
I like it. Went from a little homelessness all around in LA, and then even touching my home here in Idaho. But
Yeah.
no, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, this was great. I appreciate you coming on. And I hope we do it again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kevin.